Today we're going to talk about Alexander the Great. He created the largest empire in the ancient world, and he has been described as a military genius. He built an empire that stretched from Greece in the west to India in the east. Alexander was born in Macedonia in 356 BC. Today, Macedonia is located just north of Greece, but in ancient times it was sometimes part of Greece itself. Alexander's father was the king of Macedonia. Because his father wanted him to have the best education possible, he hired Aristotle to be his teacher. Aristotle was a very famous philosopher and thinker in ancient Greece. Alexander was taught many different things, from literature to science to philosophy. As he grew up, Alexander had many interests. He learned to enjoy music, poetry, and hunting. But what he really wanted was glory. After his father died, Alexander became the king of Macedonia. He quickly asserted his power by killing all of his enemies. He then turned his attention to the rest of Greece. Alexander gave the cities of Greece a clear choice: either surrender or be destroyed. After a number of clear victories, the other cities all surrendered, including the current capital, Athens. After he had conquered all of Greece, he started his next war against Persia. Persia today is known as Iran, but in ancient times, Persia had a large empire that in the west reached the Mediterranean Sea. Alexander and his army set off to conquer Persia by boat. When they reached the coast, Alexander threw his spear from his ship onto the land. He stepped onto the beach, pulled his spear from the land, and said that the whole of Asia would be conquered by his spear. Alexander's army won their first battle against the Persians, but this was only the first. There would be many more in the future. Alexander continued and defeated the Persian king again, even though the Persian army was much larger. Alexander then marched into Egypt in 331 BC. He arrived here and he was actually welcomed by the local people. The people of Egypt hated being ruled by the Persians, and they saw Alexander as the person who would free them. Alexander built a city in the north of Egypt called Alexandria, which today is the second largest city in Egypt. While he was in Egypt, Alexander also decided to make a dangerous journey across the desert to visit a famous temple. At this temple, he was told that he was the son of a god, and that it was his destiny to rule the world. Alexander then returned to Persia to finally conquer it. One night, Alexander suddenly saw the light from the fires of the Persian army. Alexander's army wanted him to attack straight away and take the Persians by surprise. However, Alexander refused. He wanted to defeat the Persians in a fair battle and show that he really was the greatest. Alexander won the battle and became king of Persia. The Persian Empire, which had lasted for many hundreds of years, was finally defeated. After that, he continued east and invaded India. The Indians were also defeated, even though they had elephants in their army, which Alexander and his men had never seen before. During this journey, Alexander met and talked with Indian philosophers who were known for their wisdom. Alexander became famous in India for being both a wise philosopher and a great military leader. Alexander and his army were from northern Greece, and as they conquered the world, they brought Greek culture with them. A lot of early Buddhist art, for example, is actually a mixture of Indian art and Greek art. Alexander finally died in 323 BC. Nobody knows how exactly he died. Some say he was poisoned, while some say he was bitten by a mosquito and died of malaria. By the time of his death, he had created an empire that stretched across 3 continents and covered around 2 million square miles. He was one of the greatest leaders of all time. Later on, the battles and victories of Alexander would inspire many other military leaders.